Chapter 25 to 27. The war finally ended. There were still some occasional skirmishes, but the full-blown war was finally over. This increased the influx of escort missions as the number of people trying to profit from the conflict by turning to banditry was high even in the land of water. And so, Ray and Conan found themselves on their very first mission. D rank, escort to a merchant, heading to the capital of the land of water. The ranking was different than when Ray remembered from canon. There were very little chore missions. Most of these were not approved since it was after war and ninja were in low supply, stretched thin. Hurry up, load it. A pudgy man hurried Ray and Conan as they entered his warehouse. He was pointing at a pile of goods he wanted to be loaded onto the cart. Ray looked at the man with a raised eyebrow. Hurry. I didn't hire you to lose my time. The man stomped his foot to the ground. Ray shook his head in disbelief. The merchant saw it and was about to deliver a proper verbal thrashing to what he perceived as lowly genin when Ray disappeared. Enhancing his body with Raitan chakra, Ray appeared behind the man with a burst of speed, holding a kunai to his throat. The companions of the merchant froze with their eyes bulging out. You hired us to protect you from bandits. Not as an errand boy. Ray coldly stated, pressing the kunai deeper to his throat, drawing blood. I could slit your throat and be done with it. So, you will shut up and stop ordering us around. The merchant quickly understood his position. This was not Konoha that put civilians first. Clients were important, but even Konoha, the gentler of the big five, had fail-safes in case the clients were too unruly. Merchants could be grumpy, mocking, even condescending. Ninja would bear with it. But every ninja had his limit that when reached, he could say fuck it. For example, no merchant could sexually harass or ask for sex unless it was a part of the mission. After all, merchants were merchants, not nobles. Unless they were connected with daimyo, which would most likely be a B-rank mission done by jonin or high-rank chunin. But even then the village had a list of willing kunoichi if the man was known for desiring entertainment during the mission. After all, these missions paid a lot more than the standard. But unless it were these merchants, then it didn't matter even if they completely bombed a D-rank. All it would do was a black mark in their records that nobody would care about. Not even a fine would be administered. D-ranks are for those that can't pay. It shows the low social status and nobody important would pay for one unless that person ceased to be important and wealthy. Hell, some nobles even pay C-ranks for babysitting, all to show their importance. Next time you want to ask something of us, you will ask it nicely. Are we clear? Ray asked with steel in his voice. He may be young but no 2-bit barely above average merchant is going to boss him around. He survived in a war zone and he didn't do it only to be looked down upon. It was not that he had something against the menial work. It was the attitude of the merchant that irked Ray. Yes. The merchant fearfully admitted as sweat was flowing down his forehead, his legs shaking. Ray's killing intent made the man see himself die numerous times already and it was the worst experience of his life. Ray put the kunai away from the merchant's throat, making him flop down onto the ground with his eyes shaking and teary. Ray casually walked closer to Conan as she was floating the goods with her paper and put it on the wagons. They sat on the edge of one wagon, Conan's head leaning onto Ray's shoulder as she sat in his lap, both on guard. Needless to say, the journey was mostly quiet after the little show in the warehouse. The journey was boring. Ray just created 20 water clones who killed off any bandit in the vicinity. He didn't even need to care if they are guilty or not. The peasants were poor but they were not so poor as to not be able to afford food. The current daimyo was selfish and greedy but he was not as bad as to make his subjects starve. The capital of the land of water was unexpected. It showed the wealth of the country. This country was in the exact same situation as AIM before the war, just bigger. The capital was rich while anything else was poor. Both situations were created due to the leaders. While yes, daimyo of water would gladly pay for recruitment of new ninja and kekkei genkai by hiring merchants and promising a hefty sum for it, that just meant he valued the safety of his country, his safety. As for the peasants, it was obvious he didn't see the need to care. Only the capital had electricity. Only the capital had a massive, luxurious-looking port. Only the capital had proper marble roads. Only the capital had marble statues. Only the capital had a... Simply put, it was not yet the canon time. It really hammered down the point that this was a past of what Ray remembered from the Naruto series. Ray was actually quite awkward about all the wealth he was shown. In the years in this world, he got used to living practically in the wilderness. When he came to a city that actually had electricity, he could only wryly laugh. Conan was indifferent. She didn't care either way if the people around her had happy or miserable lives. She looked at Ray's face, smiled, and sprang up, kissing him fully on the lips while licking them, getting his mind away from whatever plagued it. Only when she felt Ray's gentle hand on her head did she pull back and gave a death glare at the gawking merchants they were supposed to protect. The wagon stopped in front of a warehouse for goods. It was different from the one in Kirigakure. This one was bigger and clearly made of expensive wood. Could you please help us with unloading it? The merchant asked politely and Ray looked at him impassively. Flinching, he added quietly. Please. Conan nodded and the paper yet again floated the goods to the warehouses, stacking them. The confirmation. Ray asked and the merchant nodded, signing off his name on the paper confirming the mission was fulfilled. Ray and Conan had 2 days to spend in the capital of Mizu no Kuni. They decided to enjoy them. The next morning, Ray made breakfast for Conan. They both enjoyed it alongside some light morning kissing. Ray had a plan for his visit to the capital. As a Kiri shinobi, he won't be able to come to this place often. Thankfully, he had Conan and his superb ability with seals. They left their hitayate in their pockets and left the hotel room. Is this it? Conan asked, bewildered as she stared at the rundown building on the edge of the capital. Both her and Ray were in a henge of their adult forms. Yes. Ray trailed off. Anyway, let's go in. He reached for the door and they broke. Sighing in exasperation, Ray just went past the now doorless frame and entered the building. Who are you? An old man suddenly shouted, trying to sound confident but the stutter didn't help it much. You are Mikado Biribiri? Ray asked, trying to sound polite. Why yes. The man nodded, looking at him in suspicion. What do you want? Ray heard the guy was basically Hinata MK, predecessor, but this was really going to be a long talk, wasn't it? I came to offer you a business deal. Bussy dash. Yes. Ray clicked his tongue as Conan snickered behind her palm. Dash. I know. Ray told the man with a groan. Now, sit. He was aware that the man had a brilliantly inventive mind but was utter crap at social skills. It was utterly obvious. You want to spread your electric bulbs, street light, and electric appliances. The man nodded, his back straight, and his hands perched on his knees. But you lack a stable power source and social skills. The man nodded again, a little more enthusiastically. I can give you this. Ray took out a seal matrix consisting of 2 seals. He pointed at one of the seals. This draws a minuscule amount of nature energy into the seal which produces Raitan chakra. He saw the utter look of incomprehension but didn't care and continued. His finger trailed towards the second seal as he continued his explanation. This Raitan chakra is conducted into the second seal, where it is made to power up the seal to create electricity out of it. Mikado's eyes shone as he somewhat realized how it worked. If this was the truth then his power source problem would be solved. But... can't do s dash. Yes, Ray patiently nodded. That's why a clone of Conan here will assist you and create these seals for you. A merchant, Karubo will come in a few days to act as people's person for this little project. I only want 50% of profits for me and 15 for Karubo. Mikado blinked with his jaws hanging at the proposition. Why owe you, half? He shrieked and for the first time, didn't stutter. Yes. Ray calmly replied. You will receive 35% and be able to focus on inventing while Karubo does the merchant work for you. Mikado was conflicted as he gazed into the emerald eyes of the pale blonde man. On one hand, his life's work would spread. On another, they asked for more than half of the profits. Oh okay. He grimaced but he knew he had no other choice. Kuruzu Incorporated made him pauper when they introduced their own power source and appliances. And even if it broke more often than not, they were regarded better even though his never broke. It was all in their talking skills. Ray signed a contract with the man and left a paper clone of grown-up Conan behind. The clone had 6 seals, 1 in the head, 1 in heart, and 4 in limbs, that continuously absorbed nature energy and resupplied its chakra reserves, making it able to sustain itself indefinitely. It could even create more paper clones on its own that could make seals. A perfect factory. Ray loved that these clones of Conan were like shadow clones only without the memory transfer function. He trusted Conan to do her best for his endeavors even if it was only a clone of hers. He wasn't dense. He knew she would kill the entirety of Mizu no Kuni if he asked her. Or at least, she would try to. As for why he didn't use his own clones. How the heck would he stick seals made of ink onto a water clone? It was really depressing when he tried. They left Mikado's house after they agreed the company would be called Biribiri, and that Ray's profits would go to his account. Karubo was already convinced to go along with it for 15% so that was not a problem. Ray and Conan spent the rest of their time in the capital visiting tourist spots, holding hands, trying out restaurants, and enjoying life. After their frantic survival arc in AIM, this seemed almost like heaven to Conan. She got to eat good food, kiss Ray, and he would even piggyback her through the city. She couldn't help but have a barely noticeable smile on her lips the entire time. For Rei, that smile was very telling. He made sure to kiss her a lot during their date. He knew she loved it, and he could also say that her lips were one of his favorite places. That's why when they came back to their hotel room and Conan attacked him the second the door closed, he didn't protest. Her lips trailed along his neck, chin, and cheeks until they finally reached his lips. Conan didn't stop. She fully leaned on him, deepening her kisses as they reached the bed. Rei ended up sitting on the edge as Conan straddled him, her hands on the back of his head, pushing his lips closer to his. Her tongue started lashing at his lips, trying to find an in. Rei allowed her entrance and the two made out while Conan tried to make her body melt into his while moaning into the kisses as she could feel Rei's hands squeezing her posterior. It took them 5 minutes to separate, and as they did, Conan's eyes flashed. She wanted more than just kisses. She felt ready. She was ready. Her hand started to reach towards Rei's crotch. Rei stopped her hand from getting into his pants, holding it tightly, breaking the tender atmosphere in the room. Conan pleadingly looked at him. They were 11 but their bodies were 13. They had Hitai 8. She wanted to make him feel good. Rei gave her a harsh look that told her what he thought about it. Their bodies were not yet mature enough. Maybe it was a remnant of his morals from the modern age, but it was still there in his mind. He just could not switch it off and fuck an 11-year-old girl. But when he saw her sad, longing, and loving gaze, showing hopelessness and need. Sigh. The nature energy just had to mess up with our hormones when it made our bodies older. He cursed. His body wanted it too. It was an almost overpowering urge. Urge to become one. To connect. There was nothing that he wanted more than to have sex with Conan. Oddly enough, it was only Conan that evoked it. With an exasperated groan, his free hand went to Conan's nether area. He, at least, could give her the satisfaction. Channeling his fine-controlled right ton chakra, he pushed it into her. Conan curiously watched his hand in expectation. But then her eyes bulged as she felt the chakra. She couldn't hold herself as she shrieked in ecstasy for a full 30 seconds. The right ton chakra stimulated every nerve ending in her nether region. She felt a tingling sensation deep inside herself, and it was unbearable. Conan, for the first time in her life, climaxed, wetting the spot under herself. Her powerless twitching body flopped onto Rei's as her eyes started to droop in exhaustion as she cuddled to him, falling asleep. Rei looked at her satisfied smile with happiness. Sigh. Such a difficult girl. He licked his wet fingers and his smile widened. At least she tastes incredible. He tenderly kissed her forehead. I will have to teach you how to let your carnal desires wash over you and disperse into the nature energy. It will alleviate at least some of this uncontrollable need. He whispered lovingly to sleeping Conan, falling asleep himself. Rei and Conan did D and occasional C-ranked missions for 2 years until they were eligible for promotion to Chunin. During this time, they traveled most of the Land of Waters as the Mizukage tried to keep them outside the village but never allowing them to leave the Land of Water. They were the only duo genin team, and sending them could free one team, so they were run ragged these years. Well, they would be if they did not make free time whenever possible on their way back. Their list of dates in various locations was almost as extensive as their mission record. After all, Rei made sure he had enough of his private Conan time to refill his Conan reserves after every mission with Conan. Since he taught her how to get rid of her desires, she got quite tame. Rei knew it was not a solution, only temporary help. Her desires were still building up. But, only 2 more years and he would feel okay with it. On the other hand, since he pushed his lightning chakra into Conan, she demanded some attention every other day. Her taste was almost addictive to him. He couldn't but feel right at that. Conan quickly put a stop to these feelings though. One day, he woke up with Conan's tongue working its way up and down his morning wood. Rei could only take a firm hold of her messy bed hair and enjoy it. Since then, he also received the tender care of her mouth and silky tongue every other day. Conan seemed to get almost addicted to his cum. She tasted heavenly to him, so he surmised that it was the same for her too. Both knew that what they felt for the other was in no way normal. They loved each other for years, sure. But they were aware that these intense insatiable feelings for the other dated to the mishap with linking, and that they only grew stronger by the day. It got so serious that Rei even started to develop a special seal. Soul-affecting seal to bind them together completely. He felt their bond was somewhat incomplete. Open. And that was slowly driving them nuts. They needed some kind of control. And if that pushed them beyond the proverbial line and made them desire the other with their very being? Why not? He was even adding some special benefits. 2 years. That was the minimum period for a foreign shinobi to be trusted. Rei felt that the third Mizukage was really pushing for their integration with Kiri. In these 2 years, he and Conan didn't fail any mission. They had the best record out of all genins, which was a big embarrassment for them since they were solid elite jonin level already. They often sparred with the 7 swordsmen, more often than not beating them. It brought only increasing depression to the third Mizukichi seeing them beating his best. Alternatively, he jumped from sheer joy when Rei or Conan was defeated. But then again, neither of them actually showed their full skill in these spars. Rei often limited himself to Raitan and Kenjutsu while going blow for blow, bettering his Kenjutsu in these spars, and Conan preferred her paper clones and explosive tags while employing more of a hit-and-run tactic. To be honest, most fights, she was not even on the battlefield. Instead, she ate snacks in the treetops as her clones did the work. It was driving Maduro sparse and the current wielder of Kiba, that man hated Conan with passion. Especially since she took a sick pleasure of always cancelling his Raitan coating on the blades with her futon. Always finding a different way to do it too. Rei mostly sparred with Samahata and Nuibari wielders. Samahata wielder. It was some unknown dude with spiky white hair. Rei didn't care enough to remember his name. All the guy had was a large chakra pool, speed, and compliance of Samahata. His skills were good only at waving the chakra sucker around. But fighting him was really a good exercise for dodging. Nuibari was dangerous. Even Rei received a few holes in his body when sparring with the woman wielding that sword. She was insanely skilled and fast with it. No matter the edge he had as someone who was strengthening his body with nature energy for years. No matter that his senses were incredibly developed. The woman always found just the right hole in his defense to put the needle in. It really showed Rei that he was not yet invincible. Rei found a new respect for shinobi by fighting her. She was the prime example that it was not all in pure unadulterated power and that precision and skill could kill too. A pity the woman will be killed by her student, Kushimaru. It was the day of their promotion to Chunin when the Mizukichi called for them. Rei, expecting another mission, came leisurely into Mizukichi's office and with a slight bow, waiting for instructions. By now, the secretary was not even stopping him as his team frequented the office the most. The benefits of being able to fly on a platform made out of Conan's paper, enhanced by Rei's Raitan chakra. Their traveling speed was insanely fast. They are able to have 2 days off after every long-distance mission and be in Kiri 3 days before their expected return. To this day, Mizukichi didn't know how they did it and always grumbled about that feat. Alas, sooner returns meant more missions. Pissing off Mizukichi with even sooner returns from them, made for even more missions too. Which made for more free time with Conan outside the village and a bigger paycheck. Rei thought it was a win-win. Ah! Rei-kun! The Mizukichi cheerily shouted, making Rei scowl. You made Chunin, I see. Rei's scowl deepened. The man pulled all pretenses with Rei and Conan a year ago. He no longer was that stern serious leader, but he was now more of a goofy idiotic and annoying shit. Of course, you know I am Chunin, you approved of it, Baka. Who do you think signed the library slip to Jonin section right before my eyes? Rei mentally raged. Anyway, I have something special for you, you see. The Mizukichi trailed off. Call her in. Into the room walked a 9-year-old girl with a hitayate on her forehead. She was small. But her eyes were sharp, used to fending for herself. Instantly darting all around the room, checking for ways to run, just in case. Her eyes instantly snapped to Mizukichi and she bowed. Mizukichi-sama. Ah. Ringo-chan. You will be given to Rei-kun, alright? The girl, Ringo, instantly looked at Rei with a conflicted but kinda disappointed gaze. After all, he looked 15 at most and not that strong either. She was too. The girl blushed and looked to the ground. As a disciple. Rei finished for Mizukichi in deadpan, making Ringo blink and nod slowly as her blush deepened for that misunderstanding. Of course, as a disciple. The Mizukichi repeated with a smile. How perceptive of you, Rei-kun. Rei would forever remember the day he doomed himself and allowed the Mizukichi to call him Rei-kun. The twat used it against him in every single instance he could. Mizukichi's jovial mood suddenly disappeared as he deflated. That said. Genin Amuri. He sternly uttered, making the girl straighten up. Your affinity for Kenjutsu and Raitan was duly noted. That's why you are getting the best teacher for Raitan and one of the best swordsmen of Kiri. Any questions? The girl at first hesitated but then her eyes flashed in resolve. I thought the best was the wielder of Kiba. Rei couldn't help but smile. The girl had guts to speak like that to Mizukichi. Ah, spunky one, aren't you? The Mizukichi chuckled. Maybe, maybe not. Rei-kun is not a dual wielder, therefore, Kiba is not for him. The Mizukichi knew Rei would steamroll the current wielder of Kiba. He saw it happen quite a lot too. But to actually admit it to a girl whose dream is to be Kiba wielder? He was not so cruel. It would crush her dreams. That would not do for his plans. Not at all. Ringo observed Ray. He had long pale blonde hair in one massive braid, starting from the back of his head, flowing over his shoulder and lazily laying on his chest, reaching the middle of his abdomen. His eyes were piercing of shiny emerald green color and his face had high cheeks with some aristocratic features. He was pale and lean. Unassuming in his loose white long-sleeved kimono, reaching only a slightly above mid-thigh, and black pants. Ringo would peg him for a noble rather than ninja. Nothing like the badass muscled swordsman of Kiri. Ringo also noted his casual posture and annoyed expression as he stood 5 meters away from her. She then turned to Mizuki. Where the heck is my muscle piece of a hunk? Is this lanky dude going to be my sensei? But, no muscles. Ringo mentally whined. Mizuki-sama, are you sure this ma dash? She didn't finish it as she felt a powerful swat to the back of her head, sending her face first to the floor. That was not nice, Reikuen. The Mizuki half-heartedly rebuked Ray who was now standing straight, a few inches behind Ringo's form sprawled on the ground with one of his hands outstretched in swatting motion and the other behind his back. Is that any way to talk to your master, Bakadeshi Ringo? Look how I will beat you to death. He ignored Mizuki as he scolded Ringo. Ringo wasn't that new in Raiton manipulation. She felt the slight buzzing and then bam. She was hit. She sprang to her feet, her eyes sparkling like stars as she looked straight at Ray with admiration in her gaze. Yes. Master. She exclaimed, awe-filling her eyes. Ray blinked at her. Then blinked at the gawking Mizuki. Did I break her? He pointed at Ringo who was still looking at him like a fangirl. Congratulations Reikuen, you just gained your first admirer. Make me proud. The Mizuki wiped a mock tear from the corner of his eye. Come with me girl. Ray decided that a swift retreat was in order and left with Ringo. It was not like in Konoha. He was given an apprentice and that was that. If he didn't want her, he could find someone who did or let her self-study, or provide an accident. She was an orphan and it was a viable opinion. But he could not reject her appointment as his apprentice. But that basically meant, her skill will reflect on him and his resume. It was a nifty way to keep jonins in line and make them pass on at least some of their skills. As the door closed, Mizuki's expression changed from jovial and goofy to complete seriousness. He clasped his hands in front of his mouth that twitched upward. Consider this a test run. Ray, Kun,